So this project got kick-started by me meeting Kari Ikonen, actually. Impressive for me. I was just in the concert where he played in Jazz Head, Bremen, this jazz meeting in Europe. And it was just like, oh wow, this guy, he plays everything that I could possibly have in my head and beyond, you know? So I was like, this guy I need for my project. And I started to plan this project, build it out gradually, and found my way to Arte Sinfonica, this great orchestra with its visionary leader, Giuseppe Vicente, who is really equally broad as I am, which fits like a glove. Along this path, I was like, yeah, piano concerto, that's really nice as an initial idea, but I really wanted to say much more with that, and it grew out into the project Fight for Light.
When I first got the parts, I looked at them and I thought, what is this? I'm not gonna learn this. It's way too difficult for me. I play complex stuff, but of course it's different when I write it for myself. But with Jesse's music, when I played it, it sounded cool and really good and really interesting, and then I got the motivation to work on it. As the written parts are super challenging for me, I feel extremely relaxed in improvisation parts, and that's a nice feeling actually, like having completed a written passage and then there's suddenly freedom for me to express myself improvising, and that feels like I'm just enjoying.
Fight for Light stands for a lot of things, so it's light in many concepts. So in this piano concerto that I had in mind first, light is really about the power, the positivity, having your own goals and shaping your own life the way that you want it, finding your own light. I wanted to expand on the project, the vibraphone being this close instrument to me as a really interesting instrument to work with, and I started from there, from the vibraphone. And it became actually a Vibraphone and Marimba Concerto, which was much more about the light in when it shines on something and it would reflect on a surface, that it actually brings out the colors. Both of these concertos would feature improvisation in my deepest wish. It was very important to me to find a real form of improvisation that wouldn't just be about solos, but would really be about solos and also other roles for this soloist. So I needed people who could handle that. So that's why, obviously, Kari Ikonen was the whole source of this all, but then I also needed such a person on the vibraphone concerto. And I found that in Vincent Houdijk, who has this whole range of being classically trained, yet having this very clear path in a very jazzy direction, having studied even with Mike Manieri, for instance. So he had really this jazz interest and background, and his whole profile was actually leaning very strongly there.
This composition is so linked with the details of what is happening inside the work, and also what is happening in connection with the orchestra, and me as the soloist, or sometimes me blending in the orchestra. That is super interesting how Jesse managed to do that. And improvisation-wise, there's certain sections where I get my freedom, but also there it was extremely challenging because it's not like a standard way of improvising, because he's using all these different layers and all these like bitonal modes. It was very interesting, but also new for me. So it was a complete new world to learn how to hear in two different tonalities at the same time, for instance, and then try to put my own sauce on top of that.
It's truly music that has no limits, music that dares to be presented without any prejudice to any style, and that's what makes it so unique. And of course, being two concertos, a piano concerto and a marimba vibraphone concerto, for sure verticality plays a big role in them.
So in essence, as I mentioned, the Vibraphone Concerto was about color. So I subtitled it Becoming the Color, which is sort of a poetic way of saying it was about having all these different colors, and it would reflect, for me, it would reflect that we have a very big diversity of people to celebrate, you know, and that we have to respect each other, and that we have to, another aspect of light is the warmth, so to give each other warmth. This aspect was actually what I was trying to capture in the Vibraphone Concerto. And now there was the whole issue about the current times, you know. I was actually writing this during the COVID period, and what was very confronting already before the COVID period actually was how our society seems to be very much struggling with dualities, you know, a lot of confusion and a lot of poor listening to each other. So I was struck with that, you know. I wanted to write a piece for both soloists without the orchestra about this aspect. So I called it Unraveling Confusion. So it was, musically speaking, about creating this idea where they would essentially both harmonically but also like in their improvisations have this level of tension, confusion, but also work towards finding each other, you know, listening to each other and building that harmony and finding warmth again together. So, and essentially that makes the whole project for me very very spiritual, in a sense that I really try to reach the listener with this message of empowerment, yet sort of a message of respect as well.
Jesse sent me the music, and I first looked at it at home, and I was first trying to understand his harmonies, his process. But slowly I started to understand that it was much more than that. Jesse writes a huge structure, which in fact can be compared to a big symphony, to a big concerto, from all those names that we know that have nothing to do with the big band or with jazz repertoire. But Jesse introduces in that structure material that could also be part of a fantastic big band tune. Well, Ada Sinfonica is an orchestra that, in fact, I created it from scratch a few years ago. With an idea in mind that we should not only be technically up to the highest standards, but we should have a certain energy that would allow us to be able to approach different styles, different repertoires with the same security and being a guarantee of quality.
You have everything that you could want from an orchestra in terms of subtlety, in terms of power, in terms of coloristic approaches, and everybody is super engaged. It's a real unity, and they all seem to have their compass in the same direction. And besides this very important spiritual essence of the orchestra, they really managed to play the whole range, including my whole groove aspect, which is much more common in like a jazz big band to put down. And now it worked with this 4-piece percussion section plus timpani. It's like, wow, that's so incredibly difficult with this distance that we're working with the acoustics that you're working with. It is really impressive to see how that can come together, and it's been impeccable.